Brad and Julie have been good friends for the past 2 years. Brad longer. I knew Brad in high school. He played football at his school, just like me. Then we ended up at Central Michigan together, but played basketball as walk-ons instead. I made it halfway through my sophomore year before I ran out of money. I discovered that college wasn't for me anyway, so I dropped out and moved back to our small town. I then took a job with the Department of Public Works and decided to get an associate's degree from a local college. Brad completed the 2-year course in almost 3 years. We continued to communicate after I left, and he came to visit for the holidays. Christy worked as a waitress for a friend of mine. Friend because he owned a bar in the Detroit suburbs, and I spent a fair amount of money there. Jimmy owned the Burning Barn, a great little cozy bar with a stage and live music 5 nights a week. Apart from a bottom tooth that was slightly crooked to the side, Christy was a goddess in every way, and this smile only made her abnormal person even sweeter. I called it a pouty smile, and combined with the cute little wrinkles at the corners of her mouth, it was intoxicating. Despite her influence on me, I stayed away from her. I knew the owner and all the other employees and spent many nights sitting at the bar just chatting and getting to know them. Christy was usually one of 2 waiters on duty, and Jimmy liked it that way. Enough service and slow enough to keep consumption down and reduce the likelihood of drunken brawls. I wasn't there to find love. I kind of had this in high school. Stacy and I lived steadily for the last 3 years before we graduated. All we did together was kiss and hold hands, and she told me so since our first date, but I always thought we had something special. But after graduating from high school, Stacy got a new car, a gift from her parents, and a summer job before heading off to the University of Wisconsin. We both agreed to end the relationship so that neither of us would be hurt by the other, but we hoped to remain friends. No, I was at the bar hunting. I had fun in college, too. I knew that sooner or later I would meet a girl with whom I wanted to settle down. So it was now or never to sow all those oats. There were a lot of oats. Sometimes I noticed a pretty girl. Other times I would sit at a bar and wait for an unlucky girl to approach me. Many crossed out during the evening and came up to me. My success rate was over 50%, so I guess I had a right to gloat. A year after I started hanging out there, I stopped for gas at a 24-hour gas station after the bar closed. As I was finishing, Christy pulled up. We chatted for a few minutes. I guess I was chatting, to be honest, because she was busy flirting. Since the fall temperatures were cold, we decided to stop by Air and Water, and I jumped in her car. We talked for a short time, then she seemed nervous to me. "Why don't you ever come to see me?" she asked directly. "Well," I muttered, "I think it's because you work for Jimmy, and I'm not here to cause trouble." "Okay," she said, dragging out the word, as if unsure of my answer. "How about inviting me to dinner on Friday night? Jimmy doesn't own my free time, and I promise I won't bite." There was that damn smile. I would probably cancel my vacation to invite her somewhere. Sitting so close to her, even in the darkness of the early morning, I saw many good reasons to ask her out. Christy turned out to be more petite than I thought. After dinner that first Friday, Christy wanted to go out. She didn't soften her words, although she didn't say, "Let's go have sex." We went to my apartment, and within seconds of me closing the door, her clothes were taken off. The thing is, my back was to her, so when I turned around, I was shocked to see her standing there with a half-shy, half-evil grin. "Go to Mom," she said seductively. I wasn't so sure. Everything was happening too quickly for me. But I wasn't some kind of prude, and I was definitely turned on by her flawless body. I knew she was also 7 or 8 years older, but something about that comment didn't sit right with me. No matter. I pulled her into my arms, and as I was about to kiss her, I saw hesitation in her eyes. However, she recovered quickly, and we did our best. Difficult may be the wrong word. After some rough kisses and her frantically undoing my pants and zipper, I found myself unable to cope with the task. Everything about Christy was too aggressive. "What's the matter?" she asked incredulously, as if her help should guarantee erections for all men. "I don't know," I stammered. Maybe we can just go a little slower. You don't like me? She asked, again with that attitude. Or are you scared? Maybe the latter, I said shyly. Oh, she said this so casually that I could not understand what she was thinking about. Well, then let's do a little more. I'm just fucking excited. It helped, but the way we started was so weird that throughout the sex I had trouble trying to work things out. It seemed to me that at any moment one little guy would appear on each of my shoulders and start giving opposite advice. Our second sexual encounter occurred 4 days later with the same aggression on her part and the same results for me. It became so awkward that Christy started getting dressed and asked me to take her home. The trip became even more uncomfortable. At the bar the next 3 times I was there, instead of looking for me, she went out of her way to avoid me. Finally, I cornered her coming out of the toilet. What the hell, Christy? I questioned her. What did I do to make you treat me like crap? To me, she answered sanctimoniously, I didn't think you liked me. I can tell when I'm not needed. Oh my God, I looked at her like she was crazy. It has nothing to do with this. I wanted to get to know you instead of all this superficial shit that we talk about at dinner, maybe get into it with ease, you know. It feels like you're in a hurry, that's all. It's like I'm on the clock. Christie's gaze softened significantly, but she looked guilty. She looked anywhere but at me, obviously trying to figure out what to say next. Yes, she told me apologetically. About this, look, I like you. You're handsome and funny. You know, a great sense of humor. You turn me on. The truth is, I have a small child at home. My son is 2 years old, and my roommate is babysitting him while I'm working or meeting someone. So, as you put it, we're both on the clock. The third time was a success, but it almost didn't happen after our conversation that night. I wasn't looking to become a stepfather and was already wary of her. We took our time, did everything right, and the sex was great. After that, she started calling me instead of just waiting for me to show up at her workplace. For the rest of the month, Christy and I went out 3 more times, but for my birthday, we went to a nice restaurant. When we got into the car after dinner, she looked at me with puppy dog eyes and asked, "Can we go to the bar and dance a little before we go to your place?" "Why do you need this?" I asked in surprise. "You go there 5 times a week." "I know," she answered, lowering her eyes. "But today the band Diversions is playing. I love their music. You know I'm not allowed to dance during my shift. Just a little bit, please." It was too strange. Not her request, but the way she instantly switched from aggression to passivity. But it didn't take much for me to give in. Luckily, we managed to find a table. It was only 9 o'clock in the evening, and since we went for an early dinner, there were still a few empty seats. The place filled up quickly. We ordered drinks, and Christie's colleague joked with her that she couldn't stop herself from going back to the bar. A few minutes later, we were already on the dance floor. I knew this band well as they played at the barn burning about once every 3 months. They were really good. The vocalist was a short guy with a shaggy haircut. He looked like a typical American guy, except for his creepy mustache. I started to get nervous when he continued to stare at Christy. He sang with all his might, the band played great, and yet he never lost sight of them on the dance floor. She also looked at him until she seemed to realize that she was dancing with me. We danced for about 6 songs in a row, and I was hoping for a slow dance when the band called a 15-minute break. Christy and I walked back to our table, mostly to make sure it was still ours, and I went to the restroom. I had already endured about 3 songs by that time. When I returned, Christy was nowhere to be seen. I sat down and her colleague walked by, stopping to ask if it was time for us to order another drink. I was overheated and ordered a beer and a glass of water, and also told Christy to bring another cocktail. When she returned about 5 minutes later, Christy was still nowhere to be seen. I asked if the waitress had seen her, and her nervous response was completely inappropriate. "Ah, I think I saw her go to the ladies' room." Janie and I knew each other, as did everyone else in the bar. We weren't particularly friendly, but I knew her well enough to know she was hiding something. "Oh, maybe she felt bad," I suggested, pretending not to suspect anything. You know, too much dessert on top of the alcohol. She immediately disappeared. I stood up, tilted my chair toward the table with the back facing inward, and began to methodically scan the bar. If we hadn't been seated near the back room at one end of the long bar, I probably would have started in the other direction. Instead, I looked outside the door and saw nothing. I was about to continue my inspection when I heard the voice of the lead singer. "Fuck, baby," he said with a breath. It was cool. I looked inside again and took a few steps into the well-lit room. Christy knelt in front of Davy Vick, lead singer of the band Diversions. He was buttoning up his shiny leather pants. "Listen, baby," he smiled and used his index finger to wipe her chin, flicking the same finger to the side. "Tell your friend you're not feeling well and meet me here after closing. I have what you need." She looked hesitant, but didn't answer. "Yes," he continued. "Kiss him good and tell him to take you home. I'll meet you here in a couple of hours." "No," she answered quickly. "I can't go back. You know, I have a son." "Okay," he didn't look particularly disappointed. "Thank you for the birthday present. It was the best in years." He turned to leave through the same door I was standing in, and I froze in place. "Oh, damn," he exclaimed. Christy turned to look at me. She looked depressed, maybe upset, but not scared, worried, or panicked like I expected. "Go to hell, Christy," I said as loudly as possible, turning around and walking back into the bar. I think a few people even heard me over the loud music coming from the speakers. I was moving quickly when I heard Davy's voice. "Hooray, Christy is free again." I turned on my heel, intending to smash his face, but the little bastard was already out the same door and making his way through the crowd to the stage. The bar owner was a smart guy. He must have been owning a fairly rowdy bar with no bouncers except on the weekends. He crossed the hall to intercept me as I headed towards the exit. "What's happening?" he asked, but I think he already knew. "We need to go," was all I said, trying to get around his huge figure. "Relax, Joe," he said, placing a friendly hand on my shoulder. "You shouldn't make hasty decisions." "Don't worry," I answered, looking at him. "I only drank one glass." He was looking over my shoulder at something or someone. I turned around and saw Christy stopping about 10 feet behind me. The band started playing again, and I realized I couldn't talk to Jimmy right now. Angie, a girl I went to school with, happened to walk by. It was good timing. "Hey, Ange," I said quickly, gently touching her elbow. "Do you want to dance?" She looked surprised, but allowed me to take her to the dance floor. While I was calming down, we danced a fast dance, and then the band finally played a slow song, probably on purpose. Angie was a little drunk and snuggled up to me. I let her have it and even took some liberties with my hands. I hoped she didn't come here with a guy, or, God forbid, a guy she was dating. When the song ended, I gave her a sweet but meaningless kiss, and we left the dance floor. Christy, an expert at moving through crowds, was there before I even got close to the exit. "Sorry," she said, trying to touch me. I pulled my hand back. "Don't you dare touch me, bitch," I growled. "Joe," I said, "I'm sorry." She tried again. "You weren't supposed to see that." I laughed madly in her face. "Is it true? So your regret is that you got caught, not that you were pleasing that bastard while you were with me. Damn it, Christy." Her face was at least a little red. "Today is his birthday too," she said, as if it was completely normal. "And I've known him much longer than you." "Oh, well, now everything is clear," I answered sarcastically. "What a fool I am." She looked at me with a dirty look, like a real crazy person. I couldn't resist. "Now that we've cleared that up," I continued, still yelling at her, "I'll go home. If you had told me how close you and him are, I would have found something else to do on my birthday, and you could have spent the evening with him." "I could." She began and fell silent. "Yes, I understand. You are angry. Please don't be angry with me. I didn't want to be with him. I want to be with you. I promised him. Well, you understand. But I want to be with you. Please take me back to your apartment, and I'll show you everything." "No," I said sharply. "You say you want to go dancing for what? Keep your promise to him." And then you do it right in the back room where any of the employees could see you. You may work here, but these people are my friends. They were most likely my friends. I can never come here again, you damn bitch. I don't know why women who act like real selling bitches always look like they've been hit when someone calls them that, but she sure did. What did you just say? She asked indignantly. I think it's true what they say. I pursed my lips and hissed the words in her face. Bitch's hearing is the first to go. Christy tried to hit me, but I had already turned my back to her. I left the bar and got into my car. She didn't follow me. I didn't come to the bar for 4 days. Christy left several messages on my answering machine saying the same thing, apologizing, asking if I could give her a chance to make things right. She was delusional. 4 days after that incident, I opened the door and saw a man I had never met before. He was well dressed, in a suit, and looked very serious. Yes, I asked, how can I help? He just stood there and silently assessed me for a while. Yes, you little bastard, he answered calmly, but with a certain anger. You are having sex with my wife, and this needs to end. I was too stunned to say anything right away. He was waiting for my answer. I don't know what you're talking about. Who the hell are you? He pulled the photo out of his breast pocket with his left hand, while simultaneously throwing his jacket aside with his right, revealing his gun holster. My name is Raymond Crane, he said. My wife is Christy, and you need to stay away from her, or I'll make you. He put his right hand on the weapon. I can kill you right here, he said, and I'll have every chance to get away with it, because I'm a deputy district attorney. He seemed to want it to get to me. Christy has a problem. You're making it worse, bastard. Stay away so her father and I can help her. Don't call her, don't answer her calls, don't talk to her at work. His face was getting angrier by the second. I thought he was going to explode and shoot me anyway. He brought me back to reality. Nod your head if you understand me, you little asshole. I nodded. He turned and left without a word. When he got into his expensive car, I closed the door and plopped down in a chair. I had just escaped death, and I was going to follow his warning. Christy approached me a week later at the bar, and I asked her to send me another waitress. I know Ray came to see you, she said, ignoring my request. He's lying, you know. We were married, but are now separated. We have a common son. He is controlling and abusing me. Don't pay any attention to him. Christy, I answered. Even if that's not the case, it's over between us. Your disrespect with this little singer was enough. Oh, I see, she began to get angry. Her emotions instantly changed. Your little male ego can't come to terms with the fact that there are other men in my life. Oh, well, you're just a boy. There was no point in answering, although I had a lot to say. Besides, I believed her husband. She really was quite a perverted bitch. I found a new bar to go to. After that, I contacted Brad again through social media. We immediately agreed on joint activities that we both liked. He set up a regular racquetball time on Saturdays, and after that we would go to the bar across the street to drink beer and watch college football. I organized a camping and fishing trip, which turned out to be the most fun I've had in a long time. Brad knew my story with Christy. He knew her well and constantly teased me, and eventually I even started laughing about it. My new love for country and rhythm and blues was the source of many jokes. I lost my love for rock music and especially cover bands. I also rarely dated anyone, preferring to spend my time on more important matters. But then he met Julie. Not long after that I met Catherine. Everyone called her Cat, so that's what I called her too. She amazed me at first sight. Her stunning beauty was the first thing that caught my attention in a long time. The small club that Julie and Brad invited me to was offering a Jack Johnson-style act who was really good. It was my turn to order a drink at the bar as the place was crowded and the waiters were too busy. As I turned around with 3 drinks, I collided with her, spilling beer and whiskey on her blouse. She screamed from the cold and just stared at me. I'm so sorry, I shouted over the music. Your blouse is all wet. I'll pay for the cleaning. Something about me must have pleased her because her anger immediately evaporated. "You'll still pay," she answered with a smart look. "You're just lucky that I brought my friends here, and I have a spare blouse in the car. Where are you sitting? Because when I get back, you're going to have to buy me a drink." I bought her that drink. I couldn't concentrate on the music after that because I kept looking at her sitting with her friends. "Go talk to her," Julie said in my ear with a gentle nudge in the side. "She already let you buy her a drink, and she seemed very understanding about your accident." I felt obligated. "No, that's not entirely accurate. Cat was intoxicating. I couldn't stop looking at her, couldn't take my eyes off her from the moment I ran into her 40 minutes ago. Cat introduced her friends, and while I stammered and stammered, she quickly returned to her conversation with them. A slow song started, and I turned to it again. "Would you like to dance?" I muttered, trying to deepen my voice. I think she felt irritated at first, but then she studied my face and smiled. Her friends giggled. The dance was pretty awkward, I admit. I was failing and I knew it. But I pulled myself together. I slowed down a lot to the point where we were just spinning in place and started to ask her questions about her life. After we started talking, we found a quiet booth in front of the bar and things started to get better. Kat was smart, a little cocky, and she seemed to have the world by the horns. I was so fascinated that I could listen to her all night without saying a word about myself. I took her number and left a completely happy person. Julie and Brad teased me all the way home. The next few months flew by like a whirlwind. Almost from the very beginning, I felt that Kat and I would be together for a very long time, and I hoped forever. The best thing about her was that I was fascinated by her. Even when she was in a bad mood or cranky, I laughed to myself. And the funny thing was that it usually brought her out of this state. Kat received her degree in marketing from Western Michigan University. She had a well-paid and interesting job at a mid-sized advertising agency, and she liked it. She lived closer to Detroit while I still lived in the countryside. My work in the city administration has already brought me a promotion and an increase in salary. This doesn't mean we didn't have disagreements. Although Kat acted like a businesswoman at work, she was a free bird in her personal life. I can't say she was selfish because I never saw any malice in her actions. More often than not, she took into account my thoughts and feelings. She loved fine art and knew quite a lot about it. My taste in art was limited solely to what could be hung on the walls. Kat bought me all kinds of paintings and sculptures to freshen up my apartment. Kat loved cats ironic, yes, but I preferred dogs. She told me she wanted 2 children, 2 years apart. I was hoping for 3 or 4. Her diet and workout program were very different from mine. And of course, there were a few things we disagreed about. I thought that after marriage, we should have a joint bank account. Yes, I proposed to her in the 10th month of our relationship. Kat agreed. She wanted separate accounts. We came to a compromise. We would have 2 different joint accounts, one for utilities and the other for vacations. The most significant but least alarming difference was her love of rock music. This doesn't mean her musical tastes were narrow. She liked classic rock, some metal, and even a few techno-rock bands. Her favorite band was the Green River Band. They were a local band from the Midwest that had finally achieved national fame with 2 big hits released a year ago. When she talked about what the band had accomplished on its way to the top, I reminded her of Bob Seger, Ted Nugent, and even Eminem. This dispute always ended in a draw. She knew my history with Christy and often pushed me to reconsider my attitude towards rock and roll and not boycott it just because of one incident. My answer has always been the same. I don't know why it happened, and I'm willing to accept that at some point my brain will separate the two. We have been married for 2 years and life has been wonderful. I couldn't imagine what could be better, to be honest. We spent time with Brad and Julie often. Julie and Kat became close friends, and they were always planning things, including fishing trips for us guys. One day I came home and found a very happy wife. She beamed with joy and showed me the tickets. Her marketing company was hired by the manager of the Green River Band, and as a thank you, she managed to get 4 tickets. And not just a ticket, but a backstage pass for the entire concert. Why do we need to stand right next to a huge amplifier and look at the backs of the musicians while they perform? I asked her. She looked at me like I was crazy. Because, she said in a tone that sounded like she was trying not to lose patience, we'll be right on stage with them. Oh God, this is so exciting. I can hardly contain myself. She was absolutely delighted. There was no doubt about it. Over the next week, I dropped hints about not going. She insisted. It took her 3 days to take off her rose-colored glasses and begin to realize that I seriously didn't want to go. Why? She answered my objections with a question. Because you are my husband and you love me enough to come with me, she seemed to mean, if you love me. So I finally gave up, or resigned myself to whatever you want to call it. Brad and Julie were just as excited as Kat. We arrived at the concert a little early. Okay, much earlier. Kat was hoping to see some of the band members and maybe get an autograph. We were guaranteed this, but on a signed glossy photo like everyone else. The concert was at Ford Field, and we were directed to a separate parking lot due to backstage passes. Kat was in her element, dancing like crazy with Julie right backstage. The girls tried to share the joy with Brad and me, trying to get us to dance with them. As the band performed their last two songs, using the new encore pattern that most bands were now using, Kat went crazy for their hit Pocket Rocket. Thad Springer was the leader of the group. I never liked him or their music, even before the Christie thing. It's not true I hated him. He was the epitome of all those narcissistic rock stars who ruined rock and roll. Thad was an arrogant asshole in my eyes, and his ridiculous tattoo covering the entire left side of his face only confirmed it. And then there was that stupid red cape. Springer dressed up like some twisted combination of Rod Stewart and David Bowie for Halloween. Shortly after their song began, he looked in our direction, directly at our group of about 20 people backstage, and smiled when he saw my wife and Julie dancing. He nodded to one of the stage assistants, who, wearing a headset and carrying a notepad, immediately approached our girls. He said something into Julie and Kat's ears, and they nearly jumped out of their skin with joy. Without looking at me, Kat followed the man straight onto the stage. At least Julie glanced at Brad as she followed Kat. Thad danced with the women, letting them do most of the work. When the song ended, the crowd erupted in applause. For the last song, the group chose another of their big hits, the ballad, You Were the Soul of Me. He sang to our women, gently running the back of his hand across Kat's cheek. My wife looked like she was in a trance, and that's when I got a bad feeling. The song ended with a big dazzling light show on the last chord. Our wives were taken from the stage. On the other side of the stage, I looked at Brad. He had the same worried expression on his face as I did. The applause went on and on. The group went in the same direction as Kat and Julie, and then the general light turned on. We all stood behind a small fence. I assumed she was there to keep us out of sight of the numerous cameras recording the event. I stepped forward, and one of the guards noticed me. "Hey, you can't go out there," he commanded. "One of the concierges will escort you back to where you came from." My wife was there, I told him. She and my friend's wife were taken to that side. I pointed to the other side of the stage. Where should we wait for them? The look of pity we both received only increased my anxiety. "There's an exit from the stage," he pointed to the other side of the arena, next to what looked like a tunnel through which our football team entered the field during halftime. Brad and I began to walk around the perimeter of the stadium, fighting the flow of the crowd like a fish swimming against the current. By the time we reached the opposite side of the stadium, most people had already left. I peered into the aisles several times to get some bearings. After several failed attempts, we finally came across a guard who led us through a passage, down the stairs to a field, and through a gate that we would never have found on our own if not for his directions. Half an hour after our wives were escorted from the stage, we stood in the concrete tunnel, waiting for them and wondering if we had missed them in the confusion. None of the women answered their calls, so we did the only logical thing we could. We stayed where we were. We looked at the locked double doors with anxiety and tension. Several people passed through these doors, mostly women, and when we asked them, they confirmed that they were part of the group's entourage, or were participating in a photo shoot. Finally, and after another 45 minutes, the doors swung open again, and this time Julie came out. Brad seemed very angry and relieved at the same time. His feelings probably kept him in place, preventing him from approaching his wife. She was the first to initiate contact. Whereas Kat, there was no emotion in my voice. I was too tired to show my feelings. That will come later. Brad looked at Julie, and she looked at me. Her facial expression told me too much without giving me any details. She doesn't exist. The pause between these two simple words caused a lump in her throat, as if she was about to spew out a demon or swallow it back. It seemed to me that she was about to vomit. She left you a message, Julie said, taking a Kat's phone from her small purse and handing it to me. Brad suddenly found his voice. "What do you mean she's not there?" he asked in disbelief. "She was with you." Julie's face now showed fear. She already knew that she would have to explain all this to me and Brad. She was much more worried about how to tell her husband. "I tried," she told Brad. Then, turning to me, "I really tried." By that time, I had already opened my wife's phone. "What should I look for?" I asked with concern. Perhaps there was still time to stop what was happening. Julie told me to find the latest video in her gallery. I found it and pressed play. "I'm recording this video," she began, "because I don't have time to tell you everything in person. Sorry, this is only partially true. I'm afraid to do this face to face." She paused, but regained her resolve. "I was invited by the band Thad to go with them on the rest of their Midwest tour. Only 4 shows left. Joe, I have to do this. I want to do this. I won't get another chance like this. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I know what it looks like. I know we are married and the damage this can cause to our marriage. I think I know what you'll be thinking while I'm gone. We both know what it means to be a groupie and what comes with it. Please don't dwell on this. I can't explain everything now, but I'll be back in 2 weeks, give or take a day, and I promise I'll explain everything then. I gave Julie my rings because I love you and I want you to put them back on my finger when I get back. I also promise right now that I will never do anything like that again. I love you. I know you're watching this and probably think I'm lying, but I'm not. I will be ready to prove it to you." Someone knocked on the door, presumably to the small room she was in, and she said louder, "I'll be right there." She turned back to the camera. "I love you, Joe. Please don't worry. Everything will be fine. I'll be back in a few weeks." The video stopped. I looked at the screen in complete shock. The timestamp read 1:13. 1 minute and 13 seconds to destroy everything I thought we had. Brad and Julie drove me home safe and sound, just like they promised. Over several bottles of beer, they discussed Kat and the concert non-stop, but it did not bring any benefit. "Can we change the subject, please?" I asked, displeased. They tried, and so did I, but it only led to silence. The concert and my wife's incredible impudence were the only things we could think about. After that, I told them that they could go home and I was going to go to bed since the next day was a work day. And it was the right decision. I needed this distraction, and it was a stressful day. That night, around 6 o'clock, my sister came into my apartment. I spoke to her over lunch and explained what happened. Elaine was my big sister and the guiding force in my life. I knew it would provide me with clarity and much food for thought. The surprise was Stacy, my high school friend, who followed her to my house. Elena became friends with Stacy in high school when we were dating, and they remained friends after college. They brought some gourmet sandwiches from a little shop we frequented. "What do you think you want to do?" Elena asked after I told them the details of the previous night and showed her the video. "Honestly, I don't know," I shrugged. "If I had to make a decision right now, it would be divorce." Elena and Stacy both nodded slowly. From the expressions on their faces, I realized that they agreed with me. But then Elena surprised me. "Well, let's figure it out," she said, as a mother might say. "Maybe let's start with the fact that Kat didn't plan this in advance." "Wait," I interrupted. "I'm not sure about that. She plans everything. She's a planner. She got the tickets through her work, and on the surface it's legit, but I don't know if she was planning on going backstage. Yes, she thought, but neither she nor Julie knew that Thad Springer would drag them on stage. I had to agree. Then I thought about what happened after that. My big problem is that she might say no. Instead, she grabbed this chance, forgetting about her marriage. I don't know about that either, Joey, she said doubtfully. She was thinking about you and marriage in the video, clearly trying to minimize the damage, but still aware of the consequences. I was contemplating how to respond to this, and Stacy filled the silence, finally saying something. If she thought she could make up for your offense, she paused. Well, perhaps. She didn't finish. There was a long silence as we all considered this. Finally, I spoke. Yes, anyway, I began. She left. She's off on her great adventure, which probably involves fucking that slippery bastard Thad Springer again for 2 weeks. I don't see any way to survive this. Elena got up and made us all drinks. Looks like they went into a liquor store, too. She put whiskey and cola in front of me and asked, "This is not a quibble, but can you tell me what goes through a man's head about infidelity? That is, the act itself, when it comes to mind. Is the woman who should be yours desecrated or becomes somehow dirty?" In a sense, I said easily, I think my imagination works the same way as any other man or woman. But for me, it has more to do with breaking her vows. She made a promise when we got married. I didn't feel comfortable discussing this in front of my ex. I think she felt the same way because she blushed. "What if they use condoms?" asked my sister. "It doesn't matter," I answered immediately, sighing. "Can we talk about something else?" "Okay," Elena said. "For you, her sex with another man is an insurmountable barrier. This is clear." Stacy seemed eager to speak. "But it's not just any other guy, it's Thad fucking Springer, right?" "Again, never mind," I said. "Some random guy or Springer. However, perhaps this is even worse. Because he's a celebrity?" Stacy tried to find out. "Well, as she said, the chance of a lifetime." "Not for me," I replied. "Let's say he's very good at sex," which is most likely true given the type of celebrity that he is. How can her husband compete with her memories? I don't go crazy at the idea of spending the rest of my life having sex with just one person who will almost always think about what she did to that bastard. This made Stacy wince. I think the male point of view gave her a lot to think about. Which leads to another question, Elena interjected. "What about revenge? Would it help you move on if you could sleep with someone else?" At one point, I thought my sister was proposing Stacy to me. "Not at all," I replied with obvious indignation. "Two wrong actions do not make one right." The conversation turned to what I planned to do while she was away, how I was going to keep my sanity, and what I might need from both of them. I noticed Stacy lean forward in her chair, intently waiting for my answer. The next evening, Stacy returned without my sister. We ordered pizza and reminisced about better times. Stacy told me about her college experience. I told her how sports had fallen by the wayside and my decision to leave university. We talked about our works and what we like about them. When we had finished talking and were almost falling asleep, we decided to call it a night. "Stacy," I suggested, "if you're as tired as you look, I have a spare room." She looked at me, appraising me. "No," she said. "Everything is fine. I'll just open the window." She grinned, clearly pleased that she could restrain herself. "Can I come tomorrow evening?" she asked, packing her bag. "Or maybe we'll go to the cinema." We ended up going to the cinema. The next evening was Friday, and I took her to an Italian restaurant where we had our first date. After that, we walked along the embankment, holding hands. When I dropped her off at home, I leaned in for a kiss, and she didn't stop me. Sunday was the first day that I didn't see anyone. Brad and Julie called to check on me, but we ended up talking about the day's football games and surprise wins and how our fantasy players performed. Julie said she was glad I wasn't spiraling into alcoholic depression. Stacy and I continued to meet on Tuesday and every other day that week. We have revived much of what was forgotten when we separated. I haven't seen Elena, although she also called to check on me. I expected Stacy to tell her what we were doing. 2 days before Kat was supposed to come home, or at least that's what she said in that damn video, I got a call from Julie. Kat called her, asking her to tell me that she was going to Boston for her last concert, and that Thad was paying for her plane ticket home. She said that we'll take an Uber from the airport. Moreover, this additional concert will delay her for 6 days. I could feel Julie wince over the phone, trying to convey Kat's ridiculous statements. She wanted Julie to tell me that she loved me and couldn't wait to see me. For me, any little thought of staying with Kat ended with that call. She didn't even have the courage to call me herself. Brad and Julie seemed so ashamed of it all that they started staying away from me after that call. I knew I hadn't lost them as friends for long, just until Kat and I made a decision about our future. Stacy took over the support. 2 days later, Stacy and I were sitting in my living room watching a romantic movie. As I moved closer to her, she began to get nervous. I never had time to make my move. "Joey," she said softly, I know, and believe me, I feel it too. My feelings for you have grown exponentially in recent weeks, exponentially. However, I'm not going to be the person to help you cheat. You might not even consider it cheating given how things turned out, but I can't do that. I'm falling in love with you again, and I want us to be together when everything calms down. Can you understand this? I pulled her towards me and placed her head on my chest. I understand, I told her sincerely. I think I want the same thing. In recent days, I have often wished that I had never gone to college. Shouldn't have left you. I felt her take a deep breath and heard her son. We sat there, lost in our thoughts, for some time. Can I still see you when she gets back? My tone was ... desperate. We can see each other as friends, she sighed. I hope this leads to something more meaningful. Have you made any decisions regarding your relationship with Kat? Now her voice sounded desperate. I'm done with her, I said decisively. But divorces in this state take at least 6 months. That is, if she doesn't fight. That night we held each other for a long time. I think we both held on to each other like a lifeline. I'm sure Stacy was thinking the same thing as me, that we were cheating right now, even without sex. I tried to somehow justify it by what my wife did to me. How Stacy dealt with this in her head, I never asked. Stacy and I didn't speak for the next 2 days and nights. The next morning, I started calling lawyers. The one I ended up making an appointment with was recommended to me by a colleague as a shark. After I told him my story, I asked if we could file for divorce while she was in Boston. It can be arranged, he said with a smile. It will cost a little more, but we can do it. We might even be able to get something from Thad or his group. He actually proposed infidelity to a married woman. There's a chance it won't lead to anything, but... No, I interrupted. He will have lawyers who know how to deal with this. And he knows it, otherwise he wouldn't be so impudent. Just hand her the papers, and oh, I want to include this in the papers. I took off my wedding ring and handed it to the man. He accepted it with pleasure. Stacy was glad that I contacted a lawyer and started the process. There was something in her tone that I couldn't understand. "Okay, Stacy," I said. "Speak." She thought for a long time and then began to stammer. "I don't know," she began. "I like you, Joey, and you already know it. I think it's more than just sympathy, and I feel the same from you. But I don't want to start or renew our relationship with something hanging over us what Kat did to you. You won't be able to regain your self-esteem and confidence in your future decisions unless you talk to Kat and try to understand why she did what she did. You have to do it." She quickly changed the subject when she saw that I was starting to get nervous. Arguing was not her goal. Later that night, lying in bed, I tried to push her words out of my mind, but I couldn't ignore them. She was right. Christy was different, I told myself. I didn't have time to fall in love with her, to become attached. But the more I immersed myself in introspection, the more I realized that it was only due to a fortunate combination of circumstances that I did not suffer even more. A few months, and who knows, things could have been much worse. It was much harder to explain to Kat. I knew she was strong and impulsive. These were the qualities I loved about her, but they turned against me and became deadly. With the new light of day, I also felt lighter and more enlightened. I realized that there was a lot more that I needed to do besides filing for divorce. Julie worked at a community center and took care of cases for less fortunate children. I asked her to recommend a mental health professional or therapist. She knew 3 people who worked with several children there. I talked to all 3 and eventually chose a guy named Oscar. "It's none of my business, Joey," she said carefully. But what led to this? I knew what she was asking, and it didn't upset me. "I'm just working on myself," I answered simply. "We need to sort out some things." That earned her a raised eyebrow, but also a look of respect in her eyes. It was nice to see something other than pity looking at me. The next thing I decided to do was to focus on what excuses Kat might make and prepare to rebut them. This was not necessary for the sake of argument. If I wanted to know exactly what kind of woman she was, I needed to be able to filter through her bullshit. Thinking about her video and comparing her to Christy, crazy bitch as she is, I decided that her first line of defense would be the fragile male ego. I made some notes in the journal I bought that afternoon. When I got a little stuck, I called Stacy. "Well, you're already halfway there," she exclaimed when I told her what I thought I would have to face. This surprised me, I think mainly because I finally understood something correctly about women. "You're right about the ego," she said. "This is the first thing modern women refer to. Probably ancient women too." She giggled and enjoyed her success. "The female ego," she continued, "we don't call it that. Is it a want or a need? This is something different. How are you going to respond if she confronts you with this?" "I don't know," I answered quietly. "I'm stuck." "Come on, Joey," she interrupted. "Let's pretend that I'm her." She tried to change her voice. "It was the chance of a lifetime," she mimicked. "You can't seriously say that you're going to let your ego get in the way of a happy future. A life full of beautiful memories that we haven't yet created together, simply because I took advantage of something that could never happen again. I know you can't look me in the eyes and tell me you don't love me." "Hey, you're good at this." We both laughed. "Okay, let me think for a minute. I'll tell you what," I began after a pause. "No, Kat, I think it's your ego at work here. Your ego gave you permission to hurt me and break your promises, to go with that slimy bastard. And guess what? His ego too. I guess he saw your rings before you took them off and gave them to Julie. And what? Because he can sing and is famous, does he have the right to do so? Is it not important for him and you to destroy relationships and marriages?" "Not bad," she said more seriously. "But you didn't answer her question, so she'll give it back to you like this. I went because it was the chance of a lifetime. I told you I was going, and I was honest about it. Remember, I even mentioned groupies just to make it sound. Just so you know, I knew it would hurt your pride, but more so your ego. I knew it would take you time to get over this. You even got an extra week. Look at me, Joey. I don't like him. I've had sex with, yes, famous people. Why can't you get over it?" This question got me thinking. We were both silent for a moment while Stacy let me think about the problem. She then encouraged me and gave me some tips. "Joey, what got you so angry when you caught that waitress doing things to the singer? You know, in that room. What feeling came over you?" "It was easy. She should have been with me," I said indignantly. "And then she just left with him." "Okay," she said carefully. "Maybe, but what about this? She left you out, but she humiliated you, insulted you, and could have humiliated you if she had been caught. This is true?" "Yes," I answered quietly, not liking to relive this event again. "So her ego outweighed yours," she continued. "Her needs too. Her wishes. That's the common thread here. Kat is using the video to confuse you. 'Hey, I told you,' is how she will present it. Stop worrying about your feelings, your ego, and let's focus on mine. My needs and desires, because that's what really matters." Probably so. I began to get tired and upset. "Think about it," she said. "Maybe sleep with it." I told her I was seeing a counselor and her mood seemed to improve. Sleep came almost immediately as soon as my head touched the pillow. Over the next few days, I spoke with Brad and got his opinion. He would divorce this bitch, was his only answer. I talked to Julie and my sister too. Elena was against it. She thought I should seek forgiveness and move on. It told me a lot about Elena, but it didn't make me love her any less. It was helpful to hear her point of view as opposed to Stacy's. She wasn't happy about Stacy and I spending time together. When I pointed out what my wife was doing, she simply sighed and said she hoped I wouldn't be too hard on Kat and that I would stop seeing Stacy when my wife got back. It took me less than 20 minutes to realize that I didn't like Oscar at all. Luckily, I was able to make another appointment the next day with a woman named Lydia. She turned out to be the most useful. When she asked what I wanted to achieve, I said I never wanted to make that mistake with a woman again. How would you describe what is wrong with you? Her question took me by surprise. I, I don't know, I stammered. Maybe I have some repressed problems from childhood that are manifesting themselves and causing me to be attracted to harmful, selfish women. Oh, Lydia laughed loudly. Maybe your selector is just broken. And we both laughed. After that, it became very easy for me to talk to Lydia. She was very encouraging, but also not shy about being direct. Ultimately, it came down to asking the right questions as the relationship progressed. Create hypothetical situations and then play, what if? If only I knew it was that simple. I felt much better. A call to my lawyer confirmed that they were ready to serve her papers right before the concert in Boston. The people at the apartment management office weren't happy that we ended our lease early, but I didn't care. I started packing our things, hers and mine, to make the process easier. Stacy and I played roles over the phone a few more times. The day before Kat returned, I knew she had already been served the paperwork, and Stacy and I had been on the phone for 4.5 hours. Most of the time we talked about the future and not about my soon-to-be ex-wife. I slept with hope for the future. Strangely, I felt so good that my future seemed bright with or without Stacy. I was going to take things slow with her. There was no way I wanted to go through something like that again. When I returned home from work, Kat was sitting in the kitchen. She had a half-empty glass of red wine and an empty bottle next to it. She just looked up at me without saying a word. Look who came home, I couldn't resist. All the rage returned in an instant. Nothing could have prepared me for seeing her there. How could you do this? She asked, slightly slurring her tongue. Funny, I quickly replied. That should be my question. She tried to interrupt me. It won't work out tonight, I said, raising my hand. You're drunk or almost drunk. You may feel a little like I did in the early days. I won't get the answers I need now. We'll talk tomorrow if you're sober. You need to start thinking about where you will live. I headed up the stairs to change into something comfortable. Her condition was something I didn't foresee, although I should have. For dinner, I decided to go to the pub. I wasn't going to listen to her whine about how poor and miserable she was. When I returned at 11, Kat was asleep in our bed, formerly our bed. I went to the guest room and got ready for bed. I got everything ready before Kat got home. Then I texted Stacy good night. She responded, wanting to know how it went, but I didn't want to talk about it. I especially didn't want to print this. I told her we'll discuss this next time we see each other. The thoughts that tormented me at that moment concerned whether I wanted another woman in my life. It wasn't that Stacy wasn't attractive enough. She was, but I knew what awaited me and Kat. The next evening, Kat was a different person. I've already been informed that she spoke to Julie. Brad told me about this. Elena also called to yell at me about the divorce papers. I told her to shut up, my marriage was over, and I wasn't going to change my mind. My favorite dinner was on the table, and Kat looked like she had been cleaning the house and cooking all day. She was wearing her favorite tight top and jeans. Again, no words except hello. I examined the meatloaf. Kat grimaced. No, I didn't poison him, she snapped. Although I had such a thought. Sit down, I commanded. She's not used to me talking to her like that. I think she went to the fridge to get some beer just out of spite for me. I'm not drunk right now, she said as I cautiously tasted my food, but my question remains the same. As far as I understand, I began, remembering what she asked last night. Our marriage is dead, but I have questions, and I think you at least owe me an explanation. Can we not start with this, please? She didn't beg, she just spoke. I know you have questions. I will answer everything completely and honestly. I don't want a divorce. I want to discuss everything to understand your feelings and what we need to do to move forward. I didn't answer this. After a long pause and putting my fork down, I spoke again. What were you even thinking about when you went with them? It was a pretty direct question. Like I said in my video, she answered without hesitation, clearly having prepared for this question. This was the opportunity of a lifetime. I didn't think, or rather, I just had to do it. It was an amazing experience, and it's a thing of the past now. I was even able to use some of my skills in marketing, which I didn't expect. Yes, I spat. Was that before or after you spent time on your back in his bed? She ignored my taunt. Joey, she continued, reliving her joyful moments. When Julie and I got to the other side of the stage, we were with the women who were with the band. As I already told you, I was one of the 6 who were invited to continue the tour with them. As you probably know, there were 4 shows in the first 10 days. At each concert, new bands joined and others left. There were 6 in Cleveland and 10 in Ann Arbor. I didn't keep track of the numbers after that, but we were busy. I chuckled sarcastically at this. It was impossible to stop her. We were publishing on social networks almost all day. On those nights when there were no concerts, we accompanied the group to social events, pre-planned visits to nightclubs and upscale restaurants. During the day, we visited places booked by the group's management. One day at the Cleveland Zoo, lots of posing and hundreds of photo shoots for various fan pages. Right before the 3rd concert, I told Thad about my marketing degree and suggested some ideas to improve his media presence as well as strengthen his image. I suggested that he organize live broadcasts from these events, which would look like it from the fans. He put me in touch with the group manager, who put me in touch with the marketing team, and that's why I stayed an extra 9 days. Great, I said sarcastically. Now he can have virtual groupies instead of real ones. Now that the damage is done, I didn't care. It was time to get to the important stuff. How many times did you actually sleep with that bastard? I asked, ready for an answer. You didn't use any protection. Kat looked at me carefully. It took her a lot of effort not to explode. It was written all over her face. Finally, taking a deep breath, she answered. What the hell, Joey? She half complained, half screamed. I just told you about all the things I've been doing for the last 3 weeks. Sex was meaningless and only happened 4 times. Here's your question. Sex. Now, just FYI, sex wasn't in the top 5 highlights of my time on tour and wasn't even a consideration when I decided to go. Yes, Kat. Sex, I said coldly. And yes, this is what is important to me. This is the part that jeopardized our marriage, broke your vows, and showed you to be disrespectful and unloving. And you didn't answer my question, I noticed. I could see that she was trying to avoid discussing sex or what I asked. She had it wrapped up in a cute little gift box in her head. She was trying to put a bow on top, and I ruined her beautifully prepared speech. Having made up her mind, she decided to approach the issue directly. I told you, she said defiantly. This happened 4 times. Thad and I didn't use any protection he doesn't like. Condoms. The drummer, David, and the bassist, Kyle, used them. This happened once with each of them. She finished with a tone of, "Are you satisfied?" Well, we already have a problem, I replied, because I don't believe you, and I'm not sure I'll ever believe it again. Never heard of a groupie using their marketing skills. But let's move on. What was your plan, I continued, to get your husband back when you get back? Do you think you knew me well enough by that point? Or thought she did? It seems she was ready for this question too. I thought that if you loved me, and because I told you everything, there wouldn't be any. What do you call it? Return you back to the ship. I plan to show you how much I love you by showering you with attention and adding a little. Well, you know, The stupid bitch tried so hard to hide her guilt that she couldn't even say the word. What made you think, in your wildest dreams, that I would even want? You know, with you. This question struck a direct blow, but we did not play battleship. The anger that was building in me was because I had not bothered to properly vet her as a life partner. Joey, she said, as if trying to make me laugh, I'm not damaged goods, for God's sake. You can have sex with me. I'm your wife. I understand that I hurt you in ways I didn't expect, and in some cases I knew I would, but obviously not at the level that it turned out to be. We can survive this. I'm not trying to be trite or make excuses. What I'm trying to say is that I'm still the same as before. Not something worth saying. Yes, that's comforting, I said evenly. Your thoughts about this don't reassure me, because I don't think so. I'm telling you right now that there is no getting over it. Please, Joey, you can stop this, she sobbed a little. I returned home, completely ready to devote the rest of my life to you, just like before the concert. Or at least that was my plan until you filed for divorce. I can't, Kat, I told her sternly. You're right about love. I can't just turn it off. However, I have lost all trust in you, all faith. This is what happens when one partner is unfaithful. Moreover, any remaining respect you might have for me would disappear if I took you back. All these necessary pillars were destroyed, and what we had was left in ruins. Is this all because of your school friend? She asked, holding back her rage. Elena told me that you dated her while I was away. What cynicism, I laughed bitterly. But since you asked, the answer is no. My sister actually brought her here the day after the concert to try to cheer me up. I won't lie. Maybe we can work something out in the future, but we both agreed that I should decide what to do with this relationship first. So it's all about her, Kat answered in a low, growling voice. She was just biding her time. How noble. Be honest, if you hadn't reconnected, you wouldn't even be thinking about divorce. My anger skyrocketed. There was a long pause as I tried to regain my breathing. It also gave me time to debunk her weak argument to divert attention from her actions. Kat, I said quietly and evenly, listen to me. You killed me the moment you decided to go with this group. She killed me, you know. Even if during these 3 weeks I had decided to stay and try to establish something, the relationship between us would never have been the same. Sex with them makes me sick, I continued. But honestly, that's the least of our problems now that I've been able to think rationally. You helped me with this, by the way, by staying with them for an extra week. That's all I've said about trust, faith, and respect. You say you came here to stay forever, and you will try to make amends. The problem is that I will never believe it. Moreover, if I stayed with you, I believe that this one action of yours would give you a reason to cheat again in the future. There's nothing left for us here, Kat. If we had the kind of relationship I thought we had, you wouldn't be able to go with them, or I wouldn't care. Kat, I care, and you definitely went. I expected the conversation to continue, but Catherine looked depressed. Her shoulders slumped as I ranted. I was both disappointed and relieved that I didn't get to use my male ego speech. There seemed to be nothing more to say or do from the looks of her. Kat, I said now without emotion. Read the documents, consult with a lawyer, and sign them. I was very fair. No matter what you do, I've already given notice to terminate the lease, so neither of us can stay here longer than 10 days. I didn't pack our things as some kind of stunt. I'll help you if you need it, but let's just get this over with. She let out some kind of moan or scream. Then quiet sobs began. Usually I was the person who would console her, but not now. She realized it too when she ran to the bedroom. 2 days later, when I returned home, there was no dinner. Just Kat and the almost empty house. Sorry, Joey, she said sincerely. Sorry for everything. There's no hope for us, is there? It was a strange question that I knew she already knew the answer to. No, Kat. I was busy packing all my things, she said after a deep breath. I signed the documents. She pointed to the counter where we usually charged our phones and left mail. I was offered and accepted a job with the Green River Band as Director of Internet Media, she said proudly. I will always love you. I know you think you're doing what's best for you, maybe us, and maybe you're right. I wanted to tell you this face to face, like I should have done at the concert. I'm leaving tonight and spending the night with your sister. I hope you find what you are looking for and live a wonderful life. You too, Kat, I said as she came to hug me. This was our last time. I married Stacy, and we have been together for 23 years. Where does time go? She came into the house while I was preparing dinner. We alternated in cooking, and were already accustomed to cooking for 4 instead of 5. Our oldest son, Eric, just committed to Notre Dame. The other two, another boy and our youngest daughter, were in high school and doing great. Stacy placed the magazine on the counter where we usually charged our phones and left mail. I think all couples have this common place where stuff gets dumped. She looked at me as she always did, and I immediately knew that she had bought it for me. I decided to see what was there later, but as I was passing by, I noticed a photo of Catherine, and it looked like she had given an interview to Rolling Stone. While I was preparing the work, my thoughts flew far away. That night, when I came home from my last conversation and hugged Kat, I was expecting another conversation and another attempt to win my heart. I honestly told her that my heart was no longer with her. Instead, I found a house from which all her belongings had disappeared, and a letter sitting neatly in the center of our kitchen table. Joey, I thought about what you said for a long time. Thanks for the conversation, by the way. Some things made me look inward, and it was unpleasant. I don't claim to understand men and the way they think. This whole damaged goods thing is about sex. Women worry about their men falling in love rather than the actual act of physical intimacy. As for this, the sex itself was unremarkable, other than I can say that I had sex with the man from the first poster that hung in my bedroom when I was 13. But what you said got me thinking. I forced the rest of the group to use condoms, but not Thad. It showed me that there was at least some intentionality in it, and that I was very inclined to do it again. It made me wonder if I even wanted to be married. After much thought, I gave you the answer and your freedom. I know we were heading towards this anyway, but I decided to speed up the process. You were right, and unfortunately, I don't think I know myself well enough. I definitely shouldn't be in a serious relationship. I'm still sad because despite what you probably think, I love you and always will. With love, Kat. And that was the end of it. She called me the next week to let me know that the new job was under contract and she had accepted it. She gave me her new phone number and said she would text me where to send the divided funds when the divorce was finalized. I gave her my information so she could sign the papers. Stacy and I started going on dates once it became apparent that Kat had actually left and taken that job. Things got even more heated when my lawyer told me that she had signed the documents, but we abstained from sex until the divorce was officially finalized. Stacy and I decided to go slow. She, like me, was wary of the classic rebound, and I was even more concerned about my inability to read or understand women in general. We found creative ways to deal with this. We talked. We talked about everything and everyone, baring our souls. It became a game, something fun. We never got angry when the other didn't quite understand. We were patient and caring. This took our relationship to new heights. Stacy and I got married 2 years after our divorce was finalized, but by then we both knew it was the right thing to do. The marriage was a foregone conclusion. That night, we finally made love. It was amazing. Things have only gotten better since then. People often use the standard trope of, I would die for my spouse, when trying to describe true love. I had something different, something better. My worst nightmares over the years involved losing Stacy. They ranged from a car accident to some kind of illness, and the magnitude of this loss always woke me up in a cold sweat. It's strange, but in these dreams, it was never that she would leave me for someone else. Stacy highlighted several paragraphs in Kat's interview. After working with the Green River Band, she landed a job with another local up-and-coming band and helped them skyrocket to fame. A dozen years later, Kat worked with Aerosmith, then Journey. She became very famous and respected in the music industry. Interviewer: with all the success you've had, do you have any regrets? Kat: just two. As you know, I was married to a wonderful man for a short time, and I never married again. My second regret is that I never had time for another loving relationship because of this crazy business. My first and greatest regret is that I hurt and scared away my only husband because of my selfishness. Through old friends, I know that he has a wonderful woman and family, and I am very happy for him. I know that we could have it all together, and I often wonder if I did the right thing then. Interviewer: well, on behalf of the music industry, we are very grateful to you for the decisions that you made. After the highlighted part, Stacy added a handwritten message. Her loss was always my gain, my sweet man. I love you. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.